Hey everyone, welcome to the Quarter Two Community Call with DIMO. I'm Shaolin, I'm the community manager here at DIMO, and with me today we have Andy and Rob. The topic of discussion is the DIMO apps, tokenomics, and governance of the DIMO network.
Cool. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to quickly start us off by going through why this project exists and what it is that we're building. For those of you who don't know, DIMO is focused on creating the best open source connected vehicle experience for car owners today. We're building it as a general purpose IoT platform, connect any device to the internet, but today and for now we're focused specifically on cars. A big part of that is creating an open hardware ecosystem around the vehicles as well, so any vehicle can connect to the platform. We've also built an app and a website that allows you to, if you have a Tesla or another modern vehicle, to connect your vehicle without hardware. And we've been at this for about 6 months, and in a public fashion, and have connected a couple thousand cars to the platform. So every day there's thousands of vehicles checking in with DIMO, and there's tens of thousands of people that are waiting to connect in the future. I'm gonna go through and give you a quick demo. Here's the mobile app. I've got it pulled up on my computer here, and you can see what that looks like today, pulling through some of our demo cars on here. One of the things that's important about DIMO is that we think it's critical that we reward users for providing data to the platform and keep track of that. So we've launched this point system that allows you to keep track of the contributions that you've made to the network via the data from your car. And we also have a web app here that allows you to basically see sort of the Fitbit for your car type of data. This is my personal vehicle here, and you can see the range of my car, the insights around how it's charging, the amount of driving. We've also built privacy into the platform, so you can check out where you can set a location for where you don't want the data to be collected, as well as see what data is being collected. And this is something that we're going to continue to develop over time, and a big part of that is building apps on the platform. So we've kind of created this as an example of the power of what we can do with DIMO. And a lot of work has gone into creating the what we call primitives that enable apps like this to exist. So we talked about the open hardware ecosystem, which is really focused the DIMO platform and the open hardware ecosystem, enabling any vehicle to connect as easily as possible. The vehicle identification and on-chain identity for vehicles allows apps to basically recognize which car they're talking to and make sure that each car is unique. We're building an Explorer application that shows aggregated high-level data about the network as a whole, and also will allow people to essentially subscribe to data feeds about specific vehicles or geographic regions that they're interested in, and that will also generate revenue for the network as a whole. A lot of this is powered by smart contracts and a token model that basically helps us make sure that all of the participants in the ecosystem are aligned, and also that the transactions that happen between users and vehicles and applications are all transparent and based on a shared set of rules that is fair to everyone. So we over the course of the 6 to 8 months or so that we've been building this, we've identified a number of different applications that will make sense for drivers and enterprises that people would be interested in using DIMO for. And we started to invest in obviously building the initial pieces that need to exist for these apps to be created, but also in teams that are starting to build them. So we're going to talk a little bit today. We're not going to get into a whole lot of detail about these specific use cases, maybe until the end, but we're going to talk about how these apps will interact with the platform and how we think that the model we're building for a developer platform on top of DIMO is going to make a lot of sense long term and allow us to create a sustainable ecosystem that can really move the ball forward when it comes to mobility and our ability to create next generation applications for all types of transportation and IoT use cases. So I'm gonna hand it over to Rob, and he's gonna go through what the DIMO token means for drivers and how we've kind of worked with the community to sort of shape what this can be as a part of the project. And I'll jump in and answer some questions at the end, and we can take it from there.
Great, thanks. So we'll quickly touch on kind of how the tokens earn, but really the topic of this conversation is going to be more about how it's used inside of the ecosystem. But real quick on how it's earned, the primary way to earn the DIMO token is as a driver through what we're calling baseline demand signal, which is regardless of whether there's anybody building apps on top of DIMO or using your data, you still earn DIMO simply for connecting, and that's primarily to bootstrap the network. We'll start with a high issuance for that, which will decrease by about 15% every year. And then the market demand signal is something that's going to start off very low, but increase over time. That's as more activity is happening on top of DIMO on the demand side, where people are consuming data, building applications, connecting with vehicles. As tokens kind of flow into the system, drivers will earn based on how their data is used. And so over time, we expect to see the baseline demand signal start to wane off as marketplace demand signal starts to pick up and take a spot. This graph is purely illustrative. There's nothing, we can't anticipate the market demand side of it, but it's just to kind of show how we're thinking about one kind of coming in and replacing the other. I should also say as well, for that topic and also what we're getting into, we can't make all the disclaimers of any Web3 project. We can't guarantee exactly how the token will work. There's continued kind of regulatory review and operational review for all of this. These are no promises can be made this time on exactly all the token dynamics. So so getting into the real topic for today's bit on tokens. It's not just for drivers. So it's going to be used for staking across the network to really align the incentives of all the different parties. If you want to produce hardware for DIMO that goes into vehicles and connects them to the network, you'll have to stake the token and to get a one-time license, but also to per hardware device that you send out there, will also need to have additional staking with it. And the idea there is to keep the hardware producers incentivized by holding a large amount of DIMO and creating a kind of a security deposit pool that users can go after and challenge if they feel they've been wronged by the party and they haven't met their obligations. Same thing goes for app developers. App developers will have to, app developers will have to stake tokens to get a license, and then there will be some subscription style fee monthly for connecting to vehicles. The idea here, again, protect users and their data and create a sustainable ecosystem in terms of tokens flowing in and out of the foundation. Next slide. So we'll kind of show what this looks like on a flow chart here. Introduce the components piece by piece so it's not too overwhelming. We'll start with just this. The very basic core of this is the driver, their vehicle, and the telemetry device that connects them to their vehicle. And they're earning baseline issuance. On this slide, we're introducing the dynamics for the hardware device manufacturer. So in our case, for the first several thousand devices we've sold, those are produced by a third-party company named AutoPi. And in this case, they would be staking DIMO to get a license to manufacture those devices, and they would be staking additional DIMO per telemetry device. And some of that will come back to them in the form of a rebate if those devices stay connected and working. Some of that will go back to the foundation treasury and the DIMO integrations team that's helping to give them the license. And some of that might be burned if the device does not stay connected. I've also introduced in the bottom right here the DIMO court, which is coming in DIMO improvement proposal number 2, which is the method by which challengers can go after the stake of device manufacturers and app developers who don't fulfill their obligations and have those tokens slashed or distributed to affected users. And the dynamic with the hardware manufacturers, whereby they are issued licenses and stake tokens, will be outlined in improvement proposal number 3. Next slide. Proposal number 4 is how app developers will kind of do the same thing. So similarly, they'll have to stake tokens. They'll have to get a license from the DIMO app team, and that will allow them to interact with users and receive their data and issue DIMO back to them. Similarly, as they transact, they'll be generating some inbound tokens to the DIMO Foundation treasury, and similarly, they can be slashed at the DIMO court if they are misbehaving. And this last slide just kind of puts it all together. And the slide after that is just a simplified version of the same thing, just showing how the marketplace and app platform sit at the middle of this. Developers can build apps on top of DIMO. They can relay data to data buyers, and they're being licensed and staking through DIMO smart contracts to interact with users.
And this represents kind of an evolution, not a fundamental change, but a recognition that initially when we started DIMO, we were quite fixated on the use case of people buying data from vehicle owners, actually specifically electric vehicle owners, and we're very fixated on the value of battery data. And what we realized once we started building was this is maybe 1% of the total value that could be created by something like DIMO, maybe even less, especially when compared to a lot of the other applications and services like the used car market and insurance companies and vehicle maintenance and car sharing applications that really want access and connectivity to these vehicles. And so we realized that rather than fixating just on the data buying and data sales for specific enterprise applications, that it really made sense to have that as one app amongst many in a marketplace and built on a platform. And so we've taken the time to really structure that in a way that we think is fair and incorporates a lot of the best practices from the sort of like Web 2 App Store world, the Apple Android App Store, and also a lot of the components of an open Web3 ecosystem, something like what Helium has built, or a lot of other projects like Ethereum and their interaction with developers. And so this is our attempt and something that we think is the first step that we're going to take towards turning DIMO into a platform. And a lot of that is actually going to involve taking apps that we already have, like the ones that I showed you, and essentially starting to treat them as third-party apps built on top of the platform. And the same interaction also goes for hardware developers as well. So, Rob, you want to get into this one?
So, yep. So we've talked a little bit about how the token's being used, and really when we start to break it down, you can see how the token supercharges each step of our flywheel. So starting off with users, the baseline demand signal creates the kind of initial pool of users that leads to more devices and data, and which gives a larger substrate for hardware providers and software integrations teams like SmartCar, who allow us to connect vehicles, more demand for what they have. And the more data that there is being generated by these telemetry devices and integrations, the larger the incentive is to build on DIMO for developers, and we'll kind of supercharge that with grants and dev support. And the more developers, the more apps, the more DIMO staked, the more use there is for users who will come on, earn more DIMO, and keep the flywheel spinning.
So I can go into some of the specific use cases that we're working on and supporting today. And then I think we have a couple questions from the community that came in via Discord that we're going to answer at the end. So I brought this up before. One of the biggest markets in general is the used car market. It's multiple trillions of dollars a year just in the US. And it's also an extremely complex and distributed market. And it's heavily dependent on a lot of different variables when you're talking about how to get a specific valuation for a vehicle. And we think there's about $140 billion a year worth of commissions that should be going back into users' pockets if the market was more efficient. And one of the biggest ways that we think the market can be made more efficient is with user data. So as we launch vehicle identity and some of the other features that are coming out in the next couple of months, we're also going to start to pilot a way for users to indicate that they'd like to sell their car. And then there's a couple of different ways in which we're going to be able to help them get the best offer for their vehicle. And this is something that we're going to rely on some very best-in-class partners. Nothing to announce today, but both startups and large enterprises are quite interested in getting access to not just the data from users' cars, but also their intent and a signal that they would like to sell their car and get an offer for it. So keep an eye out for this use case. And obviously, if you're interested in building on this as a car dealer or a car auction, or somebody that's already involved in the marketplace for vehicles, this is something we'd love to talk to you about, and you can reach out through any number of channels, and we're pretty easy to find on the internet. The next big area, it's kind of second biggest category of things that people spend money on, is how do you get the best and know that you're getting the best deal for your insurance coverage. There's a number of tools out there. Trellis is one that we've evaluated. Canopy Connect is another that basically serves as Plaid for insurance data. And one of the things that we've heard from users is that they'd like to have sort of a comprehensive glove box of not just all of the data from their car, which obviously we have today for many vehicles, but also the sort of like metadata around the car, the title, registration, and insurance, of course, is another big one. So we're building that. We're going to release it into the native app. And what that's going to look like at the beginning is just the ability for someone to pull in all of their insurance information. And then on the other side, insurance brokers have expressed interest in being able to, basically contract one-on-one with users to get access for that data. So if you receive a notification from your insurance company that they're going to raise your rates 30% year over year, which is happening to a lot of people right now because of inflation and the dynamics of the market, you'll be able to shop around and get a quote without having to go and dig up a bunch of other information. And ultimately, we see your driving data as being able to help you get a cheaper quote for insurance if that's something that you want to do. This is never going to be a requirement of using DIMO, but something that we think is really user focused and going to make a lot of sense for some people. Then there's also a use case that we've talked with several electric utilities and software companies from the utility and the electrical distribution world about, and this is a screenshot from a company called Arcadia that builds some software that integrates utilities with end user applications, and this chart over here is produced by a company called WattTime, and both of these are examples of potential partners or integrations that would allow us to essentially help users with electric vehicles directly offset some of their carbon emissions by helping shift their load on the electric grid from peak hours to off-peak hours. And so what this means is we've noticed a lot of our users tend to charge between, let's call it 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. And generally that's when the load on the electric grid is the highest. And so by allowing them to set their charging schedule later in the day, they can potentially save money if their utility is integrated directly into DIMO. But also, they can, at the very least, be rest assured that they're using the lowest carbon intensity electricity that they can get if they're in an area that, say, has nuclear base load overnight or a lot of renewables coming on during a certain hour. By pulling in data from the electric grid and mashing that up with data from the batteries in users' cars, you can make the system as a whole much more efficient. And the last use case is something that I'm quite passionate about. Have worked in the AV space for a number of years, and from the core team has also spent quite a bit of time building software for autonomous vehicles. And we think that there's really a long-term opportunity to move the DIMO proof of movement concept and primitive into the autonomous vehicle world and help people start to trust these vehicles more. And that's something that there's not going to be a long-term or a very short-term use case for the network. There's not a ton of autonomous cars on the road, but we've already started to pull in data from let's call them automated systems. So level 2, or in some cases, level 3 automated driving systems, and being able to sort of store a verified copy of that data and make it available to users, we think is the first step towards building much more complicated and useful applications that essentially allow multiple different types of autonomous vehicles to be compared with each other, and also for some of these other applications like the insurance apps out there to be able to have a greater degree of trust in some of the automated driving data that's out there, and some of the systems that are making safety critical decisions on public roads today. And a lot of this is coming down to a primitive that we're going to put out in the next couple of weeks and fully open source the smart contract code for, and start to build apps on top of. And there's going to be some nice like sort of graphical ways that this is represented to users, but at the core, our goal is to sort of capture every important event over the life cycle of any connected device, and obviously cars are sort of the biggest category of connected device. And so this is something that if you're interested in building on, and if you have a source of data, whether it's vehicle finance data or vehicle maintenance data, these are all things that we're interested in kind of pulling in and adding to improve the user experience on top of DIMO. So let's get into some questions, and then we can sign off for this community call.
Cool. Thanks, guys, for everything that you've said so far. I'm going to pull up some of these questions from Discord, and we're going to start off with the first one. We have a user who goes by Dr. Pillow, and they're going to ask, how can we leverage tokenomics and governance to protect user data from a malicious data consumer? As in, if I purchase data from DIMO, can I follow somebody's location?
Yeah, hopefully some of the slides, I know the question was asked prior to the presentations. Hopefully some of the slides help to clear that up a little bit. To get data from DIMO users, apps will have to be licensed. They'll have to agree to certain terms about how they'll use data. And users will opt into sharing that data. So kind of the same way that, hold on. Okay. So in the same way that any other application that you interact with agrees to terms of you, DIMO apps will agree to terms of you. You'll have, we're hoping to build this in a way that you actually have more of the power and more flexibility in how you interact with apps, and more recourse in the fact that the tokens are staked, that you could, if the app developer does something malicious, leaks private data and things like that, you'll be able to, there'll be some recourse through the DIMO court.
All right. We have another question from Discord from username Fallen. Does it make sense to give proportionate rewards for data shared in instances where a driver opts out of sharing certain data streams, i.e., I don't want to share location data, but I do want to share my fuel mileage and tire pressure?
Yeah, we've talked about this a little bit in the past, as something that could impact issuance. But as of right now, the plan would be that baseline issuance is kind of a are you connected or are you not question, and we just need to determine we need the data that we need to determine whether you're connected or not. And that doesn't mean the data is going to be shared and monetized. It just means that we're collecting it to provide kind of the basic DIMO service of being able to see where your car is in the app and see that it's connected and earn baseline rewards points. From there, you'll make that decision individually on an app by app basis, what you want to share. And obviously some apps won't work if you don't give them the permissions that they need, or if it's a case of kind of market issuance with apps monetizing data on your behalf and issuing DIMO back to you. Obviously, if you're not sharing data, that might impact what they're able to do in terms of monetizing your data.
All right. Hopefully that answers your question, Fallen. And we have one more from a user named TonyWeb3. It is, what is the governance voting model? Is it something similar to other projects where each token represents a vote, or is it something like I have a device, then that means I get one vote?
Yeah, so there's a little bit more on this at docs.dimo.zone is what the governance is. And we're starting off very simple with a model based on, so Compound Governor came out and a lot of projects have been using that. That is a kind of one token, one vote style voting application with delegated voting. So you can delegate your voting power to someone else. And the major kind of alternative that a lot of projects have used are, well, there's two of them. One is kind of an NFT based voting system where one user, one vote. And the other is kind of a locked voting vaults. And the longer you lock your tokens up, the more voting power you have. On the first one, on the NFT, one person, one vote, there's a lot to like about that. The one reason we don't think it's going to work for DIMO in the near term is we'll have lots of drivers, but we'll also have many apps, hardware manufacturers, OEMs, et cetera, that will hold large amounts of tokens, and they will have if each of those has either one vote only or has a vote for every device they manufacture, it's either going to skew too far in one direction or the other. So we want to make sure that they have their voice, and ultimately, there's a lot of criticism around one token, one vote in terms of giving power to whales, but at the same time, those whales have the most to lose if the voting goes in a bad direction. So they are more incentivized to keep the network healthy. So again, not a perfect system. The other system I mentioned that is very interesting is something that we do want to look into and potentially evolve into over time is the kind of curve model. Curve is another blockchain project model where you lock your tokens up, and the longer you lock them before, the more voting power you have. And that's just another way to make sure that people are in it for the long haul. They don't borrow a bunch of tokens to vote for something malicious and then give them back to the borrower.
And that is something that is baked into the DIMO improvement proposals for hardware and software developers as well, where there is a mechanism that allows, in theory, the foundation, if somebody's creating a very compelling hardware device or software application, the foundation can give them a grant to kind of match some of their initial stake that they need to produce either an app or a piece of hardware on the platform. And then by locking that up in the staking contract, they could increase their share of votes on the network and do so over time as they kind of deliver whatever it is that they're setting out to build, whether it's car marketplace or next generation hardware that ingests data from autonomous vehicle sensors. And that allows us to kind of get a bunch of stuff all at once, which is sort of the retroactive goods funding. So like if you do this thing, then you get these tokens, and also if you're locking up the tokens to do something useful for the network, that also increases the amount of voting power that you have. And ultimately that's something that we think certain users of the network are going to care a lot about, and they'll be able to express that and get rewarded for doing so.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, there's a lot we want to do with governance voting, but we're still limited by technology and scale at this point. So we're starting off with something simpler, and we'll hopefully evolve into something more nuanced as the Web3 technology gets better, and people continue. We'll contribute to innovations and tools in the governance space, but we're also watching projects like Element Finance and Optimism and Curve to see kind of the smart contracts they're generating for governance. Optimism is another interesting one. They have a two-house model where you have kind of like one governance structure in one house, one governance structure in another. One's more, I think, token weighted. The other one's more individual weighted, I believe. I'm not an expert in there. I still have to do more research on their precise model, but that could be something that's very interesting as well. But again, we want to see how that goes over there, and we probably don't want to start with that level of complexity on day one.
All righty. Is there anything else you guys want to touch upon before we call it quits for today?
I'm good to go.
I think that's it.
All right, everybody. Thanks. Thank you so much for coming out to the DIMO community call. We're going to go ahead and upload this to YouTube or various other sources for everyone to continue to watch. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming out today. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Rob. And thank all of you people for coming out to watch our community call today. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.